Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yashmat Priya Apriya Vishyoga Samyoga Janma Soka Agnina Sakala Yonesu Tayatmanaha Dukkha Osodaham Tat api dukam tat diya aham bhuman brahmami vada me tava dasya yogam yashmat priya priya viyoga samyoga janma Sokagnina sakala yonisu dayamanaha Dukho sadam tad api dukham atadiyaham Bhuman brahmamami vadame tava dasya yogam Tas yasmat, because of which, in parenthesis, because of existing in the material world. Priya, pleasing. Apriya, not pleasing. Viyoga, by separation. Sangyoga, and combination. Janma, whose birth, Sokagnina, by the fire of lamentation, Sakala Yonisu, in any type of body, Dayamana, being burnt, Dukkha Asodam, remedial measures for miserable life. Tat, that, api, also, dukam, suffering, atat, diya, by accepting the body as the self, aham, I, bhuman, O great one, brahmami, I'm wandering, in parenthesis, within the cycle of birth and death. Vada, kindly instruct. Me, unto me. Tava, your. Dasya yogam, activities of service. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. O Great One, O Supreme Lord, because of combination with pleasing and displeasing circumstances, and because of separation from them, one is placed in a most regrettable position within heavenly or hellish planets, as if burning in a fire of lamentation. Although there are many remedies by which to get out of the miserable life, any such remedies in the material world are more miserable than the miseries themselves. Therefore, I think that the only remedy is to engage in your service. Kindly instruct me in such service. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Prahlad Maharaj aspired to engage in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. After the death of his father, who was materially very opulent, Prahlad would have inherited his father's property, which extended throughout the world. But Prahlad Maharaj was not inclined to accept such material opulence, for whether one is in the heavenly or hellish planets, or is a rich or a poor man's son, material conditions are everywhere. Therefore, no condition of life is at all pleasing. If one wants the uncontaminated pleasure of blissful life, he must engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Material opulences may be somewhat pleasing for the time being, but to come to that temporary pleasing condition, one must work extremely hard. When a poor man is rich, he may be better situated, but to come to that position, he had to accept many miseries. The fact is that in material life, whether one is miserable or happy, both conditions are miserable. If one actually wants happy, blissful life, one must become Krishna conscious and constantly engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. That is the real remedy. The entire world is under the illusion that people will be happy by advancing in materialistic measures to counteract the miseries of conditioned life. But this attempt will never be successful. Humanity must be trained to engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. That is the purpose of the Krishna conscious movement. There can be no happiness in changing one's material conditions, for everywhere there is trouble and misery. Amagyana-timarandasya Jnana-jnana-salakaya chakshushamilitam yena tasmai shri-guruve namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Ite Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nevasesa Sanyavadi Pastatya Jatarane. Namo Mahavadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauravase Namaha. Namo Brahmanaya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagadidhaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasade Govakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So another blissful description of this wonderful Leela drama. We were mentioning yesterday, I think there was one sannyasi from, is it Japan? He was asking a question, or he was asking you a question, wasn't he? About the specifics of why the Leela is considered very much by Lord Chaitanya and who was the other? Gadadhar. And Gadadhar. So, in the material world you have films, constantly coming out from different parts of the world, like Hollywood and Bollywood, and sometimes you get these films that are called blockbusters. They're very, very strong because of the actors involved, the characters involved. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Gadadhar is also saying that this is a very special Leela between, well, the characters, Lord Nrsingadev, how great a character he is, how great a personality he is. And then you have Prahlad Maharaj, the wonderful, simplistic devotee, Prahlad Maharaj. And then you have Hiranyakasipu, who is an extremely resentful personality. And that resentment was enhanced very much against Krishna because of his brother Hiranyaksha being killed. And we can see in that Leela the kind of form that Krishna appeared in as the boar incarnation, because Hiranyaksha was also a very, very powerful demon, the brother of Hiranyakasipu. And Krishna arranges these dramas and these Leelas, and he arranges these people who he's going to fight with. He's Atma Tattva. It's always Atma Tattva. And he empowers them to fight with him. And this is the Leela and the drama that Krishna loves to engage in. So as a boar incarnation, he had to collect this earth planet from the Garbha ocean, because Hiranyaksha had the strength and the power to take it out of orbit, and it fell into the ocean. And then the fighting going on between Hiranyaksha and the boar incarnation, Krishna. So after eventually, well, Krishna played with him for a long time because he liked the play. Krishna loves to play. So he played with Hiranyaksha for a long time. And eventually, as we know, Hiranyaksha was killed and the planet was put safely back in orbit. So how resentful Hiranyakasipu was to know that his brother had been killed by Krishna. So let's begin with Hiranyakasipu, and then we'll go on to Prahlad Maharaj, because they're both examples. They're both extreme examples, and the activities of both of them are also very extreme, but in very different ways. So Hiranyakasipu, even though he was a conditioned soul in the material world, he has the usual 4 defects that is possessed on receiving a material body. Hare Krishna. Go Nitai ki jai, Hare Bol. Krishna Balaram ki jai, Radha Samsundar ki jai, Hare Krishna. And there's a sentence here in the purport, and it says, material opulence may be somewhat pleasing for the time being, but to come to that temporary pleasing condition, one must work extremely hard. Now let's look at Hiranyakasipu. His ultimate desire was to replace Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe. So that was a very extreme desire. And obviously, according to Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he had to work extremely hard. So as we know, Hiranyakasipu, he stood on his tippy toes with his arms in the air, for I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's something like 60,000 years. So because this was in the era of Satya Yuga, which was about 1,700,000 odd years, the length of time of Satya Yuga, 60,000 years wasn't that much. But can you imagine standing on your tippy toes with your arms in the air for 60,000 years? I don't think we could imagine it, could we? It is so extreme. The hard work that Hiranyakasipu had to put into this austerity. So much so that after some time, as we have read, Lord Brahma came. And should he have come? Should Lord Brahma have come at that time? Because Lord Brahma extinguished the fire that was coming out of the head of Hiranyakasipu. He also quelled the smoke that was coming out of the head of Hiranyakasipu. And we can understand from the descriptions here of these purports, translations and purports, that the whole upper planetary systems of the universe were so hot and so smoky that no one could live in those planetary systems. They were scattering in all directions to avoid these really extreme conditions. But this was the power of Hiranyakasipu's determination. He was so determined to amend the killing of his brother. And also he had his own desires. His desires were, as I've said already, to replace Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma, he went and he couldn't find Hiranyakasipu. I mean, after 60,000 years, you wouldn't think he could find him. But of course, Lord Brahma is also a very advanced in mystic power. Anyway, eventually found him. And Lord Nrsimha, when he eventually killed Hiranyakasipu, he turned to Lord Brahma and said, "You shouldn't have given him these benedictions. It wasn't right for you to go and give him these benedictions." So he chastised Lord Brahma, because Lord Brahma, he could have gone to the milk ocean then. Why should he come individually? Why should Lord Brahma descend individually to benedict Hiranyakasipu? Of course, it's all Leela, but it was even the Leela of Lord Nrsimhadev to chastise Lord Brahma. So you can see the extreme way of life. I mean, Hiranyakasipu, he was already extremely opulent. Is that better? Okay. He already had extreme opulences. And he was hoping that Prahlad Maharaj would be the beneficiary of those opulences. Prahlad wanted nothing to do with his father's opulence. He was, again, Prahlad Maharaj. Let's focus on Prahlad Maharaj. He was born in a demoniac family. When Hiranyakasipu was meditating in this extreme position, the demigods took advantage and they rampaged the demons. And they wanted to kill as many demons as possible in taking advantage while Hiranyakasipu was meditating. And they came across Kayadu. Kayadu was the wife of Hiranyakasipu. And the demons had their swords and they wanted to kill, because they knew that Hiranyakasipu's son was within the womb of Kadayu. But then Narada Muni is always involved in most leelas. He pops up. His intervention is always very wonderful. And out of respect, the demigods said, all right, Narada Muni, Hare Krishna. And he took Kadayu to his ashram. And of course, in Narada Muni's ashram, there's always Krishna Katha. There's nothing else but Krishna Katha. So Prahlad Maharaj was listening to all the Krishna Katha. And he became pure. So pure that when he came out of the womb of Kadayu, he wanted nothing to do with the demoniac qualities of his father. And he was always in conflict. The conflict between Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakasipu was incredible because they were both at extreme ends of one another. And Hiranyakasipu was so demoniac. Can you imagine taking your own son, a small boy like Prahlad Maharaj, and doing all those horrible things that he did? So let's just quickly go through those things. Just if someone could put their hand up and tell me, give me one thing that Hiranyakasipu did to Prahlad. Is there the microphone? He threw him off a cliff. Right. Now, can you imagine being thrown off a cliff? Can you imagine someone wanting to throw someone off a cliff? What else? There was a boiling big pot of oil or ghee or something. I can't remember what. And he wanted to throw Prahlad into this big pot of burning oil or whatever it was. Every time. Because Prahlad was thinking of Krishna. Smaranam. Prahlad had perfected Smaranam. What else? Pit of snakes. In Australia, I just wanted to say where I'm living, they have 6 of the most poisonous snakes in the world. in just Australia. And I've seen quite a few poisonous snakes, but I'm sure at that time, these snakes were like serpents, pretty much. So he wanted to throw Prahlad in a pit of serpents, and then putting Prahlad outside in the freezing cold, trying to kill him through freezing him to death. I mean, what kind of a personality is Hiranyakasipu? The extremity of his mentality was just unbelievable. So, another thing about Prahlad Maharaj was implicit faith in Krishna. He had implicit faith in Krishna, that Krishna would always save him. Now, another thing around this blockbuster Leela was the cheating. It's all about Prahlad Maharaj, it's about Nrsingadev, it's about Prahlad Maharaj, it's about Hiranyakasipu, in all that extreme behavior, but it's also about cheating, extreme cheating. Just try to remember that the activities in this very big Leela is extreme. Everything is done in extreme measures. So let's look at the cheating. Let's look at the extremity of cheating. Hiranyakasipu, first of all, was cheating himself because he didn't know who he was. He was an atheist. He didn't believe in Krishna because he was always saying to Prahlad, he was always jiding and what's the word I'm looking for? He was always putting Krishna down as a non-existent personality. Where is Krishna? You show me this Krishna. Where is he? Who is he? I'm not better than Krishna. I'm your father. You have no faith in me that I can defeat Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj was always coming back to his father. And a father never expects a son to be disobedient. Of course, now in Kali Yuga, in families, it is very difficult because within family life, there is so much conflict. Just like there were with Hiranyakasipu and Prahlad. Prahlad was unflinching. He never gave up preaching about Krishna, even to his father. So his father was constantly getting more and more angry. Don't forget, he was always already full of anger and resentment because of what happened to his brother. Now it's his son. His son is turned on him. Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Dad, you don't understand. You're just a demoniac personality. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please surrender unto Krishna. No, never, never. Hiranyakasipu's thinking, it's okay. I'm going to cheat Krishna. If this Krishna exists. So Brahma gave him these boons. And those boons, with those boons, he thought, I'm invincible now. No one can touch me. No problem. But then, Krishna, the supreme cheater. Krishna's the supreme cheater. And just look what happened. So the form that Krishna took on as a Leela avatar, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is independent. But he takes on these roles as Leela avatars. And what an extreme form this Leela avatar presented. So just think of the extremities of this Leela. It's very, very extreme and intense. Prahlad's love for Krishna, extreme and intense. Ahaitaki apratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. Unmotivated and uninterrupted love for Krishna through mostly the smaranam, the remembrance of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says there's 9 processes of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Achanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atmanavedanam. Always remembering Prahlad Maharaj. Is he in this pillar? Yes. He's everywhere. And he thumped the pillar with his fist. And out comes the extreme avatar, the Leela avatar, as Lord Nrsingadev, roaring. And it's described, this battle between Hiranyakasipu is Atma Tattva. Lord Nrsingadev is Vishnu Tattva. And through his austerities, Hiranyakasipu developed yogic cities. He didn't develop the complete yogic city. There were certain cities that he didn't have. But he had enough cities to do battle with Krishna. And then Yogeshwara. Krishna is the master. He's the master of all mystic power. So what chance did really Hiranyakasipu have? Not a blade of grass moves without the will of Krishna. So Krishna set him up. He set Hiranyakasipu up. He allowed Hiranyakasipu to be empowered by the boons of Lord Brahma. So the rest is history. And in extreme moments, because not only did he kill Hiranyakasipu, as we know, he killed his whole army, consisting of millions of soldiers, millions of demons. And sometimes through the cities, through the yogic cities that Nrsimhadev was displaying, he would grow so big, his form would go into the higher planetary systems. So big, almost covering the universe, and roaring. Can you imagine the roars? So much extremity, so extreme, that all the inhabitants of these higher planetary systems were frightened. They'd never seen such a form. Who is this person? What is it? And then when everything was finished, Hiranyakasipu was dead, all his intestines ripped out of his stomach, and Lord Nrsimha had put his intestines around his neck. That's another extremity, if you think about it. Can you imagine someone killing someone, ripping their stomach open, grabbing their intestines, blood, bones, mucus, bile, and putting the garland around a garland of intestines around his head? How beautiful. How incredibly beautiful, but ghastly at the same time. Everyone was so afraid. All the demigods, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, all the main demigods. They darened Lakshmi Devi, the eternal consort, sitting at the feet of Krishna. She darened. I can't approach Krishna. I can't. It's Prahlad Maharaj. He's the only one that can appease the anger of Nrsimhadev. And Prahlad Maharaj had no fear. He was his worshipful Lord. He had no fear of Nrsimhadev. And then just imagine like a cuddly toy, you know? Kids, you know, they go around with these toys. They play with little toys. So when Prahlad presented himself to Nrsimhadev, Nrsimhadev saw him as this beautiful little soul in this little body. And he just gently picked him up and put him on his knee and patted him on the head. Can you imagine being cuddled by Lord Nrsimhadev? And everything was good. Everything was fine. And Lord Prahlad Maharaj, as a result of that patting, became empowered to offer beautiful prayers to Krishna. So these are examples. The material world is also extreme. We reach the crossroads. We reach the crossroads. We finally attain the human form of life. What do we do? What do we do? No one knows. What is the human form of life meant for? I don't know. No one knows. You know, in the last century there was a personality. His name was Galad Simpson. He was famous taxonomist, anthropologist. He studied species of life. And he spent his whole life studying species of life. He probably didn't know about the 8,400,000 different species of life. But he knew a lot of species of life. And he saw that every species of life had a purpose. Because Krishna says also about this purpose of every living entity. He says, besides this inferior nature, O Arjuna, there is a superior nature of mine, who are all living entities who are struggling with material nature, but also they're sustaining the universe. So this ecosystem within this 8,400,000 different species of life, every species has a purpose. It's called swadharma. They have an occupation to keep the ecosystem as perfect and complete as it is. So we can know that the honeybee creates honey. And these are just simple examples. The cow produces milk. And every species, even down to the amoeba, has a purpose to it. But he said, I can't understand the purpose of the human form of life. Can't understand. All I see is destruction. The human being is very selfish, very self-absorbed, and all that happens, the reactions to all those activities of being selfish, self-absorbed, lusty, wanting more and more and more and more, is destruction. So he concluded that the human form of life was a scar on the evolutionary process of species of life. Unfortunately, Galad Simpson didn't know about Krishna consciousness. Who knew about Krishna consciousness before Srila Prabhupada came? You could probably count on your hands who knew about Krishna consciousness. I think Prabhupada describes that even when Krishna was present on the planet, doing all these beautiful leelas and dramas, only about 300 people out of the whole population of the world knew that Krishna was the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I've brought a visual here. It's a color A4 sheet. It's an A4 sheet of paper. And I just wanted to pass it round as I'm finishing up the class. And you could have a quick look and pass it on to the next person. That can go on that side. So, in the crossroads, having a human form of life in the crossroads, and not knowing what the purpose of having a human form is, one usually chooses, the majority of souls in the human form of life, they choose the material energy. So that color, again we go back to the purport, Material opulence may be transcendental, material opulence may be somewhat pleasing for the time being, but to come to that temporary pleasing condition, one must work extremely hard. Okay, you choose. Within your human living, you desire material things. At the time of death, you go into an extreme position. And that picture depicts what you're going to experience when you enter the womb. Prabhupada says when the living entity enters the womb, they don't even know which womb. Is it the womb of a pig? Is it the womb of a human being? Is it the womb of... What womb is it? There's 8,400,000 different species of life, and most of them are born into the womb. There's also eggs, there's also sweat, perspiration. But the womb, what womb am I in? And look at the condition that we have to tolerate. For 7 months, we're sleeping in the womb. We don't know anything. And then after 7 months, we become conscious. And then we see where we are, and we cry. Again, I failed. I'm a spirit soul. And again, I've put myself in this condition of life. I failed Krishna again. My lovable Lord, I failed again. And they come out of the womb having experienced such agonizing conditions of life. And then, again, another life of who knows what. Prabhupada said the human form of life is so rarely achieved. So here we are. How fortunate we are to be in this congregation this morning. Because we're embodied souls. But somehow or other, we have had the good fortune to come here in Vrindavan, and we are presenting ourselves to Gaur Nitai, to Krishna Balaram, and to Radha Samsundar. We are sitting here and we have embraced the Vaishnav culture. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. It doesn't matter. We are embracing the Vaishnav culture. And how fortunate are we if we count this very small congregation this morning and compare it to the population of the world. How fortunate we are to be here. So I always try to put things in perspective. So as we endeavor to make advancement in devotional service, because that is the activity. Ultimately, all these leelas, Paritranaya sadhunam. Krishna comes to attract and please his devotee. So his devotee will get more and more. His heart will be packed tightly with more and more visuals of Krishna performing his beautiful pastimes. And then we have the visuals, how wonderful Krishna is to come in a form that as a conditioned soul we can see. How could we see Krishna in any other way? How is it possible? Krishna has made it so wonderful and so simple for us by appearing in the Archa Vigraha forms. These are not idols. That's got nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. These are special Archa Vigraha forms. And you know what? when Krishna and Balaram, there was Pusta Krishna, he was one of Prabhupada's older initiated sannyasis. There was a group. There was Guru Das and Yamuna, his wife, Pusta Krishna, and there was a Grihastha called Bhadraj from Los Angeles. He was an artist, and he was a sculptor also. And he mentions that when they were when they were making the deities in Jaipur, sometimes the artist that was sculpting would take rest or eat sleep, or Bhadraj was very, very pedantic, he would take the hammer and chisel and he would carve himself to make sure that the beauty of the deities were really, as much as possible, they were perfectly beautiful. And he decided to ride on the truck that brought these deities to Vrindavan. And it's early morning, it's 2 o'clock, I think it was somewhere around 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is in 1975. And the truck enters the Chittakara Road. It was called before the Bhaktivedanta Swami Marg Road. And the truck was going very slowly along the road. And the deities were in these wooden crates. And as soon as the truck started going down towards the land here, this piece of land where this beautiful temple, or Krishna's house, was built, all the peacocks, how many there were, who knows? But Bhadraj was describing that they all started to glorify Krishna and Balaram's entry into Vrindavan. And they were, the noise, the cry out of the peacock is very beautiful. So there were at least, I think, he mentioned something like 70 or 80 peacocks. Because in those days there were many peacocks in this area. Because there were fields, as far as the eye could see, you could see fields and trees. And the peacocks would fly like airships from one tree to the next. And they would cry out. So it was like they were glorifying the deities. They were offering their obeisances. Welcome, Krishna, to Vrindavan, your home. So, I just want to say this while I have the opportunity. We're almost there. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. There's only glory for you. It's only glory. Krishna is so kind. What a lifestyle we have. This is just the beginning. We have a debt. We have a debt to Srila Prabhupada. An unbelievably debt. Without Prabhupada, there was nothing. just ignorance, an illusion. And Prabhupada came, planted the seed of devotion in the heart. That was his side of the contract. Planting the seed. Now our side of the contract is to water the seed. Prabhupada was the transcendental gardener. Now we become the transcendental gardener. Prabhupada has said, you take responsibility for that seed now. Water it. Get the weeds out. Read the Shastra. Prabhupada, I was reading Nectar's Devotion the other morning, and it says, it's right at the beginning of the Nectar's Devotion, it says, Prabhupada says, you don't need to read lots of books. Don't get sidetracked by trying to stuff your head with loads of information, transcendental information. Prabhupada has summarized certain books because we're so busy. I don't think there's anybody here that is not so busy that sometimes they find it difficult to read the books. And it's not a blaming thing. I had that experience also when I was here. I was so busy. There was times when I couldn't read. So that's why Prabhupada has summarized the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He's produced the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And you can read that. It's very powerful, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And there's the Nectar of Devotion, which is a summary of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And then there's the Bhagavad-Gita. If you could study those three books, that would be sufficient. Bhagavad-Gita, it is the supreme preaching tool. If you can learn some Sanskrit slokas, so whatever you're saying, you can back it up, you can reference the Bhagavad-Gita. It's very powerful. So, I just want to say that every time I come back to Vrindavan, I see the beauty and the devotion of the devotees that are living here. And I want to say you're all a credit to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is so pleased with all the devotees that are living in Vrindavan. Panchagoda, he's been here now. How long have you been now?
Too long.
Not long enough. Is that right? Not long enough. And he has done so much with the help of all you. I'm very proud to come to Vrindavan and see such hard-working Vaishnavas. You're a credit to Srila Prabhupada. I'll just leave it there. So if there's any questions or if anybody wants to make a comment, it's 9:10. Oh, was it you that asked me that before? Was it yourself that asked me that?
Yes, I asked that.
Can you stand up for a minute? Stand up. You got your microphone, right? Tell them what you want. I don't think they've heard you.
I just wanted to say that probably you had experience of a friend who got delivered just by getting prasadam. Because it's personal experience, so I want to get that from you.
I'll tell it very quickly because it's a long story, but I'll summarize it as much as I can. In Australia, one of the preaching, we did different types of preaching, but one of the preaching missions we had was we had a cafe, a vegetarian cafe. We called it Govinda's Cafe. And in the early days, this man used to come in and he'd come for lunch and he'd come for the evening meal also. And there wasn't a day that he didn't come. So slowly we got to know him. But he never revealed to us what he did because he was an elderly man. All he told us was he had terminal cancer and he had, well, according to the doctors, he should have been dead 3 years previously, but he was still alive. And he says, one of the doctors told me that if I just ate vegetarian food, I could live longer. I said, that's true. So I explained to him, it's not just vegetarian food, it's prasadam, it's food that's been offered to the lotus feet of my guru, Srila Prabhupada. So he was eating, we got to know him, and we knew his name. His name was Thomas. He was about 80 years of age. And then one day, Tom, he got really sick and he didn't come to the cafe anymore. And a message came to me, could I go and see him? So I went to his apartment where he lived. And he says, could you stay with me? And I says, I will come as much as I can. He says, will you give me your kunti mala? He didn't know it was kunti mala. He says, would you be so kind as to let me have your beads to put around my neck? So I said, of course. So I took my beads off and I gave them to Tom. And then his condition worsened. And then he says, I want you to meet my family. So we met his family. It was a small family. And then he went into a private hospital and he had a private room. And he said, could you please help me depart from this world? I said, of course. I said, but we need permission from your family. And they gave us permission. We didn't know this family. We were complete strangers. They were strangers to us. And we had pictures all over the room. We had Srila Prabhupada, nice, beautiful bhajans, and we had Ganga Jal, and we were pouring the Ganga Jal. We put tilak on his head, and we were also putting Ganga Jal on his head. And then he had earphones because he got to the position where he was unconscious. So his family were very worried, and Vishalini and myself, we were just sitting at his bedside. We'd spend hours and hours, just like you do when Sarabi was here, and you sit and try to companion that soul through his journey back to Godhead. The only thing is, he chanted a little bit because he only started to know about chanting. And he had the kunti mala around his neck. And he took prasadam for about 18 months with us in the cafe. And all of a sudden he's lying down and we were saying to the family, any time now he's going to leave his body, any time. Then all of a sudden he's lying horizontal in the bed. All of a sudden he pops up. He didn't completely sit up, but he was sort of like this. We say, Tom, what are you doing? What are you experiencing? Tell us, Tom, what are you experiencing? And he said, I've seen where I'm going. He says, I've seen. We said, oh, what's it like? Tom, tell us what it's like. He says, it's very beautiful. Very beautiful. It's very beautiful. And then he went. Who knows where he went? Even subterranean, hellish, heavenly planets are not, they're very beautiful. In the subterranean areas, hellish planets. Anyway, we went to his funeral. His body was cremated. And my wife and I sat there, we were listening to his family giving renderings about Tom. And then we come to know that Tom was one of the biggest suppliers of meat to the whole of Australia. He had 20 articulated trucks that would load meat from the abattoirs, and they would deliver the meat wholesale to all these places all over Australia, day after day after day after day. And that's how I come to know why Tom was so anxious. He never told us his history. So you can see the mercy, how the mercy of a Vaishnava, we are instrumental, we represent mercy. And we try by hook or by crook to help anybody that's living in the material world. So this was Tom. Where he went, who am I to say? I don't know. But at least he was trying to make amends of some kind. So is that all right? That's the story, It's 9:20 now, so I can take one more question if anybody has a question. Yeah. And we go take prasad.
So as you were speaking about Vrindavan giving the austerity for so many years, 2,000 years. So in Bhagavad-Gita 10:5, Lord says, everything is coming from me, austerity, knowledge, intelligence, everything is coming from me. So this demon also, he was giving austerity, it was coming from the Lord, or what do you say about it?
Krishna is in everyone's heart. We have to remember, regardless, everybody is Krishna's part and parcel. Everyone. Demon, devotee. So, in this case, Hiranyakasipu was a prop in the drama and the leela of Lord Nrsimhadev. So, it was meant that he become empowered. You understand? It was meant Krishna needed him to become empowered, and Krishna did empower him to be able to do what he did, fighting with Krishna. So, and then he attained mukti. Lord Nrsimha killed him. So, not a blade of grass moves without the will of Krishna. And look, just before we go, I just want to read this. Did everyone see that color photograph? Did everyone see that colored image? Where did it go? Because there were two. There was one there and there was another one somewhere. Anyway, you should pass it all around. It's very nice. Look, let me tell you, because Prabhupada says, material opulence may be somewhat pleasing for the time being, but to come to that temporary pleasing condition, one must work extremely hard. Let me tell you about extremely hard, right? I've got some dot points. The living entity, living in the material world, is very, very conditioned. So I'm going to read out some of these conditions. You already know about, you have to come into the material world through the womb. So we're conditioned by time. Krishna represents time. We're conditioned by Krishna's inferior energy: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. We're conditioned by the three modes of material nature. The three modes of material nature are spells. Durga Devi is empowered. And this material nature, this nature that we're living in, is multi-dimensional. It's not just three-dimensional. There are things going on that we don't even understand. So the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, they're spells. The four defects, we're conditioned by four defects: cheating, imperfect senses. We have a propensity to be illusioned and a propensity to make mistakes. We're conditioned by birth, death, disease, old age. We're conditioned by the threefold miseries. Adhyatmic, which is miseries from this body. Adidevic, miseries from the demigods. And adibhotic, miseries from other living entities. And a big one is material desire. So these are all conditions. So going into the material world, again, we have no guarantee whatsoever that we'll ever reach the spiritual world, because there are souls here, many souls in the material world that are here eternally. They're here eternally by choice. How wonderful Srila Prabhupada is. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayevacha patitanam panavebhyo vaishnavebhyo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki